here we are.
This is a section of a show I sometimes do where I make myself vulnerable, where I try to explain a concept in a way that I think about it, knowing damn well that it's probably I'm missing something. I have a blind spot. I'm articulating it incorrectly. And then you get to correct me in front of everyone.
Let's hope
Each
I can.
week, the listener gets to hear how wrong I am about life generally. And it's really fun. We like it. So when I think about kind of the evolution of host-parasite or host-disease interaction and this sort of arms race that happens, and obviously I think I oversimplify things a little bit, but as you were saying, kind of the virulence is sort of what makes it tricky. Potentially, I've heard people make a different argument too, that maybe we're taking it for granted that a virus won't just be super virulent sometimes and just have a delayed onset, and that could happen as well. I just had a guest on talking about that recently, but I tend to agree that the less virulent ones through history have been super successful, and I tend to think that like with AIDS, for example, AIDS seemed more. There's lots of treatment and the science that's advanced since the beginning of AIDS has been incredible, but also as people started becoming aware of the cause and started becoming aware of like not sharing needles as much or different kinds of sexual activity or whatever else that might cause and blood transfusions and being more aware, doesn't that make the kind of less virulent strains almost get favored, the ones that have more of a delayed onset and whatnot? And I guess the point is if people were doing lots more to distance and mask or whatever with COVID, wouldn't COVID kind of have to be successful, have to have ones that are maybe less virulent but last longer or something like that? Whereas if all of the population, if we just decided, say in May, that we're like, hey, we're all going to pretend like COVID is completely over because a few of us have been vaccinated, and now it can just spread kind of as much as it wants to. Isn't it possible that more contagious and more virulent strains will be selected for just because they can, and if they can, they'll proliferate? Does any of that make any sense? Is that in line with reality?
Yeah, well, so yes. And so kind of in the short term, so I mean, basically what we're seeing now is we're seeing this Delta variant that is probably more virulent, that it causes worse clinical disease in people. But it's definitely more infectious. And so that's when we start talking about that R0 number. So like if I'm infected, how many people am I likely to infect? And so there, the estimates I've seen is that it's probably about 2 to 3 times as infectious as the original strain.
So the original was like 2. This is like 4 to 6.
4 to 6-ish is kind of what I've heard. And so certainly like when you've got all these large pockets of susceptible people, then you do see this disease emerges because you've just got, mixing and evolution occurring. And so a particular strain comes out and it realizes, ooh, I've got a slight advantage. And that's basically what happened when this Delta variant came out of India. So they had like a 3 to 4% vaccination rate across the country, and they've got like 1.2 billion people. And so that's just a huge population of susceptible people for it to brew in and end up with this new, super virulent, not super virulent. Sorry, that's not really the right. Virulent kind of implies that it's more deadly, but more infectious. And so that it's going to spread faster. But long term, and so that's certainly going to be helpful now. But eventually, like most things that end up hanging around for a long time are sort of like our seasonal flus and our seasonal colds, that they kind of are like, they're not that big of a deal. They annoy us. But you kind of almost end up with a commensal relationship with them. And so it's not enough to kill you because like if the host kills me, it's unlikely it's going to be able to keep spreading.
If the virus kills the host, it's unlikely.
So if I get rabies, I'm unlikely to bite someone else. I mean, it could happen, I guess.
Yeah.
So you're not going to see rabies spreading like you would a respiratory pathogen, because you've got to have that direct, usually bite associated with it. And so having that lower, case fatality rate and a high infectious rate is, kind of the perfect storm that's made COVID so successful. But, I think long term, most pathogens tend to lose their really nasty bite, so that they can actually have a commensal relationship with their host.
Mm-hmm. So,
Well, and so that's, that's the thought now, is that more than likely, like, we may have a few more iterations of variants of COVID, but, eventually it's probably going to end up becoming an endemic coronavirus that we deal with every year that changes slightly, almost like the flu.
Isn't the mRNA kind of a game changer that you can just pop in a new code and
it
put
is
out
amazing.
a booster pretty quick?
I'm not a virologist. I don't make vaccines, so I don't want to talk out of turn, but I think it's amazing.
I've had people on. Yeah. It seems like a game changer in terms of, like, maybe it isn't the case that we have to just live with things in the way that we used to think, and just the speed at which you can, and it's that you don't need to, like, redo the studies and everything. You're just popping in the new strain, and boom, you have just in the same way that they aren't retesting the flu vaccine every year, or I mean, in terms of, like, approval process or whatever. It's like you have the process approved. And so once you have that, it takes like 3 days to run it through a computer to pop out here's the formula. Okay, there we go.
Yeah.